More questions and very little answers tonight in Meridian Township, as leaders there are set to meet 2 days after a special meeting about the township's leader. It's our top story at 6. Thanks for joining us. I'm Siobhan Klepfer.
And I'm Sherry Jones. Meridian Township officials have been silent for days about what was discussed in a special meeting that was mostly conducted behind closed doors and out of the public's eye.
Sources familiar with the matter tell 6 News it revolves around an investigation into Township Manager Frank Walsh. Josh Sanchez has been following the story for days. He's live ahead of tonight's board meeting. Josh?
Yeah, sure, Siobhan. As you mentioned, this is the first meeting after that closed session back on Sunday, early Sunday morning. And in the last few hours, I did get a copy of the meeting minutes for Sunday, and it shows that trustees spent 5 hours speaking with an attorney regarding an investigation on only listed as a personnel matter. Now, board members voted to accept the attorney's recommendations, and but the minutes do not explain what that was. Now, I reached out to township officials both by email, over the phone, and in person multiple times with no responses. And yesterday we were told that the township supervisor was out of the office and that the clerk was at a conference. But a short time later, I noticed township manager Frank Walsh in the parking lot of the township hall. He said he could not comment on the situation, but says he's still working for the township. Now, employees who I've spoken with in the last few days off camera tell me that they feel left in the dark on any changes when it comes to any leadership decisions. And they're feeling that same feeling in regards to Sunday as well as that closed session in December. And the township is expected to have time tonight for questions for the attorney. And stay with 6 News as we find more information on this situation here. Here for you in Meridian Township, Josh Sanchez, 6 News.
Well, since December, a personnel issue has been at the center of several special meetings in Meridian Township.
Sources familiar with the matter tell 6 News it revolves around an investigation into Township Manager Frank Walsh.
Josh Sanchez went to tonight's scheduled board meeting, hoping to get some answers. So, Josh, what did you learn?
Well, Sherry, Siobhan, tonight's board members met for the first time since that rare closed session on Sunday morning. Now, the 7-member group are holding their ground, saying they can't share any details about what was talked about in that closed session. Tonight's Meridian Township board meeting paid little mind to the questions surrounding the reasons necessary for a closed session Sunday morning. Sources close to the matter say Township Manager Frank Walsh is at the center of an investigation. Draft meeting minutes obtained by 6 News shows that the board members met for 5 hours with an outside attorney. They ended the meeting with a public vote on accepting a recommendation on a personnel matter. Trustee Scott Hendrickson says exactly what that recommendation was can't be discussed.
You know, we had a conversation. It was quite a few hours, and the attorney made a recommendation, which we approved of.
Nor if Township Manager Frank Walsh was being investigated.
Any details about anything that happened in that closed session would be contained within that meeting.
Hendrickson would only say that these type of meetings are usually on sensitive topics and couldn't give a timeline on when more details could be expected.
Oftentimes, these things do take time, and we want to give them the time and effort and due course that they deserve.
Sunday was not the first time the Meridian Township Board met for this type of issue. In mid-December, members entered a closed session for more than 2 hours. They would later publicly vote to direct attorneys to continue actions discussed behind closed doors. Yesterday, Walsh told 6 News that he could not discuss details of the situation, but that he was still working for the township. He declined to speak on camera tonight. Now, under Michigan law, all decisions, including personnel issues, must be made in a public meeting. The Township Board is not scheduled to meet again until early next month. Back to you.
So we do have an update for you tonight from Meridian Township. The township manager admits to 6 News that he sometimes conducts his private business in his office during regular business hours.
In addition to his responsibilities in Meridian Township, Frank Walsh runs a headhunting firm for other cities, towns, and townships that are looking for staff.
Walsh says that, quote, 99% of his township time is devoted to his main job, that sometimes clients call him during office hours, that he routes all work to his personal phone, email, and computer, and takes vacation time to cover any conflicts. But a source familiar with Walsh's work says he spends as much as 20% of his time on Walsh Management Services. And that's also the impression of several other sources who all asked to remain anonymous out of fear of retaliation. While an actual percentage is hard to quantify, an expert says it's hard for someone to be objective about their own outside work.
what I found in that work is that people tend to underestimate the amount of resources that they've either used or have taken advantage of from their company or their employer.
Walsh, who would only respond to 6 News via email, was the subject of a recent Township investigation. We've got an extensive story about this on our website for you, Wlns.com.
6 News has learned the group plans to hold a closed session that could determine Frank Walsh's future.
Employees with knowledge of board policies and practices tell 6 News the board will discuss Walsh's performance, including the results of an external investigation of complaints against him.
Our Rachel Ramsey is live where it's about to happen tonight. Rachel, what's the latest?
Sherry, Siobhan, we're right outside the Township building where the Board of Trustees meeting just got started. But the last topic they'll be tackling tonight has been months in the making. Multiple sources tell 6 News that an outside attorney investigated complaints about unfair distribution of employee wellness and recognition dollars. The lawyer also reviewed concerns about the way Walsh managed the Township. One of those practices under scrutiny, Walsh's use of Township resources to support his personal consulting business. 6 News spoke with a government ethics expert, and he gave his thoughts on Walsh's alleged actions.
At no time should public officials be using the public's equipment, resources, personnel in any way to support a private business that they're operating. That's not only irresponsible and likely illegal, but it's clearly unethical to be tapping into resources that are funded by the taxpayers and using those at any level for any amount of time to benefit your personal consultancy.
Now, what happens with Walsh is up in the air. Elected officials have a wide range of actions they could take, including terminating him, ordering him to training, suspension, or taking no action at all. Walsh could also opt to resign. Coming up at 11, we'll have more on the allegations against Walsh, and hopefully the Township will have come to a decision by then as well. But for now, we're going to go inside and listen to the meeting. Here for you live in Meridian Township, Rachel Ramsey, 6 News.
Thank you, Rachel. There are a number of developing stories in Meridian Township right now, from the criticisms of the township manager to the township clerk, who has to run for re-election as a write-in because she was disqualified from the ballot. Visit WLNS.com to stay up to date on all of these stories, including even more documents and details than we can bring you on air.
With 6 News at 11.
Meridian Township Manager Frank Walsh's future hangs in the balance as the Township Board looks into his performance and the results of an external investigation. It is our top story at 11. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sherry Jones.
And I'm Siobhan Klepfer. The Meridian Township Board went into a closed session around 7:30 this evening. An hour later, 6 News saw Walsh go into that meeting. Just moments ago, the board took a short break, and there is word that they could go into public open session at 11:30 tonight.
Rachel Ramsey is here for you now with the very latest on what's happening. Rachel?
Sherry, Siobhan, multiple sources tell 6 News that an outside attorney looked into complaints about unfair distribution of employee wellness and recognition dollars involving Meridian Township employees. Half a dozen employees who wanted to remain anonymous say Frank Walsh is the only person who decides who gets cash awards and adds free hours to people's vacation banks. 6 News spoke with government ethics expert John Pellicero, who says if those things are in fact happening, it seems unethical.
To have these things just be subject to the total discretion of the manager. I don't know whether they're budgeted, but it just doesn't appear, if you're a member of the public looking at this, as a normal way to conduct the business of the township and to provide the reward structure that incentivizes employees to do their best.
Another aspect of the investigation surrounds allegations that Frank Walsh uses township resources to support his personal consulting business. But Walsh claims his side business is conducted 99% of the time on his personal phone, email, and personal computer, and that the township has always been his top priority.
The public expects that anybody who's working full-time for the township is going to be devoting all of their efforts to that. And if they've got a business on the side, that kind of work should be disclosed to supervisors and the township board in this case, and should be limited to taking place outside of the person's normal work hours.
Now, Pellicero added that the Meridian Township Board as a whole has a responsibility to ensure their manager is fulfilling his duties properly. The board has several options. They could terminate him, suspend him, require training, or do nothing. Walsh could also choose to resign. 6 News will update you once we know more about the outcome. Back to you.
With 6 News at 6.
It's round 2 as the Meridian Township Board zeroes in once again on the performance of its township manager. And it is our top story tonight at 6. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sherry Jones.
And I'm Siobhan Klepfer. We told you yesterday about Meridian Township's Board of Trustees heading into a closed session to review Township Manager Frank Walsh's performance.
And sources tell 6 News that performance included an external investigation into complaints made against Walsh. After several hours, the closed session was paused for the night. But now it's just resumed, and that's where we find Rachel Ramsey. So, Rachel, what is the latest?
Well, Sherry, Siobhan, we are back here at the Township building once again, still waiting on that closed session to finish so the meeting can open back up to the public and we can hear the board's decision on what's next for Frank Walsh. And just to give you a recap on the investigation, employees of the Township who wish to remain anonymous say Walsh uses unfair distribution of employee wellness and recognition dollars, and that he uses Township resources for his personal consulting business. But I just spoke with Walsh moments ago, and he says he loves this community, has been here for 11 years, and has done nothing to take anything from the township. And I spoke with a woman living in Meridian Township. She says it seems someone always has an issue with somebody at the building, but she says because of these closed sessions the board's been having, it's hard to know for sure what's going on since there is a lack of transparency.
It just all seems nefarious and a vendetta of some type, and I don't know why, because he's had both of these jobs for as long as I've known him, so, and I don't know. I see him out in the streets, driving our neighborhoods after hours, asking neighbors what's going on, so I don't know who clocks someone's hours that is salary.
6 News will continue to be out here as the closed session opens up and the meeting continues. Tonight at 11, we should have some more information and details on the actions the board chooses to take or not take. Here for you live in Meridian Township, Rachel Ramsey, 6 News.
Meridian Township's manager is resigning following a months-long investigation. But he's not going far. The township plans to rehire him in a different role. It's our top story at 11. Thank you for joining us. I'm Siobhan Klepfer.
And I'm Sherry Jones. It took 7 months of investigations and 2 days of closed meetings for Meridian Township's Board of Trustees to come to the conclusion it was time for Frank Walsh to resign and take on a new role.
According to employees of the township who wish to remain anonymous, the decision was taken in part after the results of an external investigation into complaints against Walsh.
When the board came into open session around 7:15 tonight, they voted unanimously to negotiate a resignation deal plus a consulting contract with Walsh.
Rachel Ramsey is here for you now with Walsh's response.
Sherry, Siobhan, it took more than 4.5 hours for the trustees to come to the decision to negotiate Frank Walsh's resignation. Part of that negotiated deal will include a consulting contract with the township. Frank Walsh says that new role is yet to be defined, but will play a major part in the township, and that it's time to move forward in a different direction. All of this stems from what sources tell 6 News was an investigation into complaints against Walsh that had to do with unfair distribution of employee wellness and recognition dollars, and that he used township resources for his consulting business. I spoke with Walsh today, and he says he rarely conducted his consulting business while at the township, but when he did, he claims he had permission.
I wouldn't do that. I have my home office, I have a home computer, and I have my own cell phone for the business. It was not conducted in this office. There were 3 or 4 or 5 Zoom calls that occurred with the permission from the supervisor Steika, and that's that.
Ron Steica, the township supervisor, died unexpectedly in February of 2022. 6 News obtained documents and interviews revealing Walsh was using his office for consulting business more than 18 months after Steica's death. Now, we don't know what Walsh's severance will look like, but 6 News did get a hold of Walsh's contract, which has a severance clause to receive 1 year's worth of salary if the board demanded a resignation, which is what happened tonight. And for Walsh, that's almost $161,000. If he had resigned on his own, there would have been no severance. I asked how he and the board came to that decision.
We had some discussions with the board, and I can't really talk about what happened in closed session at all. But let's just say there's a lot of appreciation and respect for each other. And there's a lot of respect and appreciation for myself and most all of our team members here. And we all decided to move forward with a different role. And I'll have a significant role with the township going forward. And that will, from now until probably the end of the year.
Walsh tells us as a consultant he will work mostly from his home office, not at the township offices. The board will hold a rare Sunday meeting at 10 a.m. to finalize Walsh's negotiated resignation deal. Sherry, Siobhan, back to you.
6.
Tensions from Meridian Township officials, employees, and community members were on full display at today's special meeting. It's our top story at 6. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Nate Salazar. Meridian Township Manager Frank Walsh officially resigned today after months of investigations. But that's not all that happened at the meeting. Our McCoy Scribner was there, and he's here for you now with more. McCoy?
Yeah, Nate, 6 News has been staying on top of Meridian Township happenings recently, and today things seem to have come front and center, with the main message centered on honesty and disclosure from officials.
Transparency is the big key word that myself as a resident I'm struggling with, and I know that my other friends and neighbors have mentioned the same thing. They've heard part of the story from Wlns. And for our 165 employees and 100 other internal board and commission members who volunteer for this organization, every single one of them heard about this through Wlns.
There were 3 main items on the agenda for the Township Board today. First was accepting the resignation of Township Manager Frank Walsh. The second was retaining him to the Township for a different role as a consultant. And the third was appointing an interim manager, Timothy Schmidt, as officials will soon begin the search for someone to fill the now vacant position. All 3 were approved unanimously. This all comes as members say that there have been complaints made over the last 8 months regarding concerning actions with the now former Township manager. As 6 News previously reported, Walsh has been dealing with concerns about his management practices and using Township resources to benefit his consulting business.
Mr. Walsh has served the Township superbly over the last 11 years and has accomplished great things as our Township manager. He and the board have agreed to conclude his service, however, as manager at this time.
And coming up on 6 News at 11, we'll dive deeper into that meeting today. You'll hear what the communications manager has to say about the whole ordeal and the public's fight for transparency. Back to you.
With 6 News at 11.
Meridian Township employees, residents, and officials voiced their concerns today at the board's special meeting. It's our top story at 11. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Nate Salazar. Today's special meeting held at the Meridian Township centered around now former Township manager Frank Walsh and how staff members and elected officials are looking to move forward. 6 News reporter McCoy Scribner was at the meeting, and he's here for you now with a breakdown.
I think this board and I think staff and I think the township has a lot of work ahead of them.
The board unanimously passed 3 items today on their agenda: accepting Walsh's resignation, keeping him within the township in a new 8-month role as a consultant, and appointing Tim Schmidt as the interim township manager.
The township board would like to thank you for all of your patience. The board takes our employees' concerns seriously, as well as every employee's right to due process. But this board remains committed to taking the appropriate time to carefully consider these matters and to protect the privacy of both Manager Walsh and any of those who have contributed to an investigation.
6 News has previously done stories on complaints into Walsh's management practices. Meridian Township employees, including the communications manager, spoke about the investigation into Walsh.
I'm tired of staying silent, and that is what has been happening this entire time. Silence, no transparency, and quite frankly, I don't believe that the board is protecting the employees. They are protecting Frank Walsh.
They also voiced concerns that Walsh is being kept in Meridian Township to help with various projects. Meanwhile, trustee Marna Wilson says his expertise is still needed.
The reason that we are engaging in a consultation agreement is that we are in the process, deep in the process, 14 months in, of trying to bring to this community an amenity that's been missing for a very long time, and that is improving our senior center and creating a community center for everyone. In addition, the budget is very critical. This is a very challenging budget in 2025 that we need to work on. And the expertise of Mr. Walsh doing 11 budgets is not to be lost. So it will be helpful to have him in that process.
Meanwhile, Walsh thanked the community for their support these past 11 years in an emotional goodbye.
I appreciate all of you. I appreciate our team. I appreciate what everyone's done. I tried my best. It wasn't perfect. But thank you.
Here for you in Meridian Township, McCoy Scribner, 6 News.
We have new details tonight about the resignation agreement between Meridian Township and manager Frank Walsh. The Township Board accepted his resignation this month following a months-long external investigation into his performance and allegations of a toxic workplace. Today, we learned that resignation agreement includes a total of $216,000 for Walsh. That includes $63,000 for 103 accumulated vacation days, health care through the end of the year valued at $10,000, and $160,000 in the form of a payout as a consulting fee for Walsh to continue working on big projects like the township budget through 2024.